Welcome to the Art Lady channel. Today we are using stencils in class and we're going to learn how to trace around the edges of a stencil. What I have here is what we call in art stencils, and we use them to trace a shape on our paper. If the focus of the lesson isn't on what we're actually drawing, it's on what we're making. So I'll let you trace something just so that it gets done quicker. This is a stencil, and a stencil is any type of an item that we trace around to make a shape on our page. A lot of times we use lots of stencils that are circles so we can get a nice size circle. What you don't want to do with the stencil is you don't want to write on the stencil or draw on the stencil. This stencil is being used with other kids, okay? That's the main thing to remember. You decide which stencil you want to use for your picture. We select the stencil from our counter, then we go and trace it. When we're done, we put the stencil back exactly the way we found it, in a nice neat pile. And that way other children can see the shapes clearly and easily. Look at how nicely they're putting the stencils back. When you use the stencil, you place it on your paper, and you have, as an artist, you have a choice of where you want to place it. Do I want to put it down here? Do I want to have part of it coming off the page? If you're using something like an animal, you don't want to have the part come off the page that's important, the face. You want to make sure the face is looking in toward the page. You don't want to have him right at the edge here, okay? So give him a little space before the edge of the page. You can turn your paper to fit your stencil. Sometimes you might want to hold it vertically, the paper. That seems to fit nice. Vertical is the long way. This is the long side, and here's the short side. So the long side is up and down, from side to side. That's horizontal. Okay? Here on my wall, you'll see horizontal. Horizontal is side to side. If you hold your paper vertically, it's up and down. So the short end would be closest to your tummy. And of course, diagonal is crooked. You hold it slanted. So those are the ways to hold your paper. So decide how you want to hold the page, decide where you want to put your shape. Hold the stencil with your hand. You can see it kind of bumps up a little bit here, okay? I'm going to hold it with my hand, take my writing utensil, and draw carefully. I'm kind of using the stencil as a guide, going right up to the edge of the stencil. Now, as an artist, you can alter the stencil. For example, if you wanted his ears back, you didn't have to trace the ears up. Maybe you wanted to just draw them in yourself back. This is just a guide to help us. Now, I'm going to move my hands down the stencil, but notice I'm not moving the stencil all over the place. If my stencil gets moved, I just simply carefully move it back the best I can. Now I'm going to continue to draw and trace. I'm going to move my hands down. I'm going to go carefully this way. Notice I'm moving my fingers to hold the stencil as I trace the stencil. I can even turn my page. Trace around this area. Look at his feet, they're flopping. I'm going to need to hold the feet as I draw this line. Carefully moving and holding the feet. Take your time. Do this carefully, okay? And if you need help, raise your hand. We go slow and careful. I want you to try to do this on your own though, because most of you can do this by yourself. Taking your time, being very careful. Now that you have the stencil drawn, we're going to put the stencil back on the counter, exactly the way we found it. Now it's your time. Your time to be an artist. I want you to think of details and designs that you can put in your stencil and behind and around the stencil. The behind and around the stencil is called the background. The background. The background is behind and around the stencil. Maybe in the background, I'm going to add some tall grass to my llama. He's in a field. I'm exaggerating the grass, meaning I'm making it bigger and more noticeable. That way I don't have to draw thousands of grass blades. Do you see how I'm doing this? I'm not just making straight lines. I'm doing a nice big curve, like the grass is blowing in the breeze. I'm going to design my face on the llama. This is a side view, so I'm doing a nice big eyeball. I'm going to add the pupil. Maybe I'll add a curve around the eyeball for some eyelids. I'm exaggerating the eye because if I made it really, really small, when I start painting it in, I might not be able to see it. I'm going to add his little nostrils. And a nostril is the hole inside his nose where he breathes from. You have 2 nostrils, one on each side of your nose.
He has 2 nostrils too.
And, yes, he does, one on this side and one on the other side. But this is a side view llama, so I don't see both nostrils, do I? Nope. I don't see both eyes, do I? Because it's on the other side of his body. This is just a profile side view of the llama. I'm going to put a little line for a mouth in here too. This is the side view of his mouth. Okay, now I can add fur texture if I want to. I can put a blanket on the back if I want to. I can add like a saddle right here. I can design this with some fun patterns. So you're going to do your imagination or use your imagination and design your background and your stencil. First thing we do is we place our stencil on our page. Decide where you want your stencil. Then, very carefully, use a pencil and trace around the edges of the stencil. Let's watch and see how nicely this boy is tracing. Do it slow and take your time. Move your hand as you need to. See how he had moved his hand? You don't want to move the stencil though. You want to keep the stencil still. Go real slow. And you can move your hand down if you need to hold those feet. Here she is going around the tail of the dolphin. We hold the stencil and draw slowly. We do not write on the stencil, do we? No. Once you have the stencil drawn, now you're going to
Can I write a line here?
Decorate the stencil. See how she's drawing in the body of the butterfly. Now we're going to add detail to this. Use your imagination and design inside the stencil. We're adding details to the stencil, exaggerating the eyes. You can add designs and patterns inside your stencils. And we're going to turn it into our own unique imaginary picture. Add lots of patterns to your stencil using your imagination. Lots of details and designs.
Can we take these
Make
out?
your patterns nice and large so that they're easy to paint in.